Today, we're talking with Stephen Buddha Leafloor about the upcoming debut of breaking at the Paris 2024 Olympics, his social work, and his use of hip hop culture to promote healing. Buddha, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, what's up, brother? Thanks for this.
Before I hit record, we were chatting and we went all over the place. It was a very interesting exchange. I wish I hit record previously because we covered some fascinating topics, and I'm hoping we can get into the nitty gritty right about now. I have one big question to ask you, and it's somewhat loaded question, but all the best trying to answer this one. What have all your years of dance, community work, and social work taught you about people, and what keeps you inspired and passionate?
Wow. Yeah, big question. You know what? And
May
it's
I
hard
ask?
to answer. It's hard to answer without. I won't dive into it yet because maybe we'll do that in a later part of the question. But short form is, look, I was a really angry kid doing a lot of break and enters, doing a lot of drugs, um, because I was severely bullied. So I had a number of layers of trauma as a kid, and then I found hip hop and I found dance as a way of kind of reclaiming my existence. And I also found nature. So those are the two big themes in my life: nature, kayaking, camping, right? And I got into social work because I volunteered and I started taking kids on probation on 15-day wilderness trips. And that's kind of where I realized, holy shit, this I have some talent with these young men. I'm not that much older than them, but also because I was so much like them with like just rage inside and not knowing what to do with it. Right. So you fast forward, I became a social worker and um, did a lot of interesting things, even in my placement, in my master's of social work placement. And I did my second placement in England. And that's a whole story into itself about a project that I led there in 1985 called Freestyle 85, where we wrestled control away from the record companies in the early days of hip hop. And I had a whole bunch of ideas buzzing in my head about youth subcultures and about empowerment. And then you fast forward to, look, I was a child abuse investigator. I've done some of the hardest street jobs out there, blah, blah, blah. But I've always been a b-boy, right? And we were pretty famous b-boys in Canada. We opened for, James Brown, Ice-T, Grandmaster Flash, George Clinton, whole bunch of things. So I've had this long feeling that's actually happened in my personal life where I've been able to look at it and kind of analyze what's going on. Why is this working for me? You know? And then about 15 years ago, maybe 18 years ago, I developed Blueprint for Life. And we'll talk more about that, but that was kind of using a bunch of my outreach ideas based on a lot of my personal experience and a lot of hip hop experience about how to heal people. So back to your question, just to kind of dovetail it all together, it's like some of the wisdom that I think I've acquired is that it's more important than ever for me to look at life through a couple of lenses. And two of the most important lenses are power, and the other important lens is culture. And so culture can be, that's a big envelope. You know what I mean? Like that could be hip hop culture, that could be punk culture, that could be Muslim culture, that could be indigenous culture, that could be, yeah, hybrid cultures, all kinds of things. But the power one's really fascinating to me. So like now I'm at a stage, like I never anticipated this. I was just doing my thing. Okay, I know what doesn't work. Big bureaucracy doesn't work. It often traumatizes people more. Well, why is that? Well, it's often because of the power dynamics in big democracies, right? Or big bureaucracies, right? Um, because people don't have power. And it's often fucked up power that caused people to have trauma, whether it's racism and poverty and, situational stuff and all this. So why do we think things like cognitive therapy and going and talking to a therapist are going to work. It may work for privileged people, but I think it's missing the power dynamic insight. You know what I mean? It's like if a fucked up kid knows he's been court ordered to go every Thursday and talk to a counselor, he has no power. He goes to that counselor's office. He has to engage. He doesn't feel like opening up. He's still got his anger and his vulnerability. You know what I mean? Not that some things specifically that I've learned through my education, like cognitive therapy and stuff, aren't useful, but I think like that power dynamic in analyzing everything that I'm seeing in the world, analyzing the manipulation with the Trumpites in the States, analyzing the manipulation of our own governments, analyzing power dynamics within our own families. It's a super useful thing, you know. So I didn't anticipate this, but like probably about 15 years ago, I started getting asked to do keynotes, right? So like a keynote talk for the National Social Workers Conference, or I did a keynote for the World Health Organization on arts for healing and this and that. And I always try to like drill down to helping people like step back, man, remove yourself from your own power dynamic and try to understand, you know, how this indigenous kid in lockup in a maximum security in Winnipeg is feeling and how he's had all his power taken away. And you know, on the flip side, the cultural piece that I was talking about, like as a lens is culture, loss of culture, you know, takes power away, but re-engaging culture gives power back. You know what I mean? So they're not mutually exclusive insights or wisdom. You know what I mean? They kind of lockstep with each other. So I would say, you know, I can go off on a lot of tangents, but that's some wisdom that seems to work for me still. It seems to work for me still when I look at hip-hop dynamics. It seems to work for me still about, well, why does this stuff reach us in the pit of our stomach? Why does it feel so fucking cathartic when I wrote a spoken word piece about my son? You know what I mean? Or I wrote one about my own trauma. It's because in small ways, you know, we're giving ourselves power back. We're validating our feelings and our emotions, and it can happen in very small micro ways. But it's a lens that, of course, makes total sense in the bigger picture, right? And you know, when we designed our programs, because we do like bucket drumming, street drumming, and poetry and beat making, and you know, different kinds of hip hop dance, including breaking and choreo and fun dances. Like I teach the hustle from 1975 because it impacted me when I was a shorty and saw it. You know what I mean? When I saw Average White Band and Casey and the Sunshine Band, like how do you capture excitement as healing within that? You know, and then when people participate, they get these micro doses of power, right? Like, damn, I went in the cipher and I'm the overweight kid and I didn't think I could dance and everybody supported me. Damn, maybe I got some hope that there are smaller communities that can be supported. Maybe I'm not totally doomed to be isolated and lonely my whole life. Damn, other people feel like me, came up to me afterwards and said, man, it meant a lot to me when you shared your story of pain. You know what I mean? So anyways, I unloaded a lot there, but those are two big wisdoms that this old man still seems to think are useful in the world. But you know what? Like, they're complicated topics, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no quick elevator pitch, and you can't sit and do a 1-hour seminar on power. But like, when your eyes are open to seeing the world through some of these lenses, then like daily wisdom starts unfolding to you, you know?
Right. So the theme of power and culture being two major themes that people have to dance with in this matrix of life is an important sort of trajectory for you, and how people relate to each other, and how people, I guess, empower one another, or maybe take power away in certain
Yeah.
instances.
And because it's all related to empathy too, right? Like if you can't recognize power dynamics and stuff, um, then how are you going to sit in someone else's shoes? How are you going to feel empathy and things? I wish we had these. Look, grade 9 students' brains are bright and open enough to have these dope conversations, right? Oh,
Mhm.
why aren't we having these conversations in early high school? You know?
Absolutely. It seems like they're almost relevant for grade nines, but also even grown adults, in terms of moments of self-reflection, and, in terms of situations where there's a dichotomy of power between person A and person B, if it's in their personal lives, in the workplace, or wherever. It's, what I mean? Power is everywhere. It's in our everyday living, right? If we don't see it, if we don't recognize it, it might have power over how how we decide to do things. But before, and I appreciate you answering this very complicated question that I asked, but I asked because, to be quite honest, I heard an interview that you did about a year ago, and I think we spoke about it before I hit record. I heard an interview you did about your history in b-boying and breaking, and I think you spoke for well over an hour and a half, and it
Yeah.
was a really, for me, I was listening to this interview while doing a variety of things, cooking, just doing my thing in the house. And usually, when you listen to an interview, you kind of like, you listen to it, and eventually maybe you stop listening to it. I listened to the entire interview because it was very, you were very open, transparent, and really, as a storyteller, communicator, you really captured my attention, and I'm sure other people's attention, obviously the host's attention. Can you tell us where people can find this interview? It's on YouTube, I believe. To tell us
Yeah.
who interviewed you, in case they want to search it. I'm going to try to
So
find it and add it
he's
to
he's
this.
an old school b-boy, a mid school b-boy, and for these interviews, he goes by the name of Flashback. He toured with some, like, around the world with some, like, hip hop breaking shows. Like, so he's no slouch. Like, I see his old footage. He's like he's powerful, man. He's doing his thing, and we know a lot of the same people. And I think Flashback was just really interested in getting to the deeper stories as the pioneers start to pass away and stuff. And then everybody's like, oh shit, I wish I knew more about Clown. I wish I knew more about Buddha. I wish I knew more about Ken Swift or whatever. And I really love and appreciate, because there's a lot of effort on his part. Imagine he's got 42-hour interviews. So if you Google search Flashback, um, uh, I think he might have them set up as like podcast or something where people can find them. But it's long enough that people can get into being very authentic, just speaking from the heart. And sort of what we were talking about before you hit the record is, like, sometimes the gold is in the micro stories. You know what I mean? This is a false thing to always look for the big, the brash, and just the fantastical stories. Yeah, those exist and they're fun and cool, but you know what I mean? Like, I would rather hear about what the essence was like of somebody growing up in the South Bronx when it looked like you know Germany after it was bombed out by the Allies, kind of thing, and people were living with racism and crack on the streets and lots of gangs. And so how I want to understand about how people rose above that and went on to have careers. And you know what? A beautiful theme that surfaces is, as people grew older in hip hop and stuff, about like how they found their own ways of giving back. you know I think that's the biggest thing, is like in life, be open to paying shit forward. I'm kind of like all the time we talk about each one teach one in hip hop, and it's a nice buzzword, and it's a Zulu teaching, and yada yada yada. But it ain't some fucking hippity hop elevator pitch just to fucking throw out there. If you don't live it, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
sit on that once for a while. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like reflect deeply what each one teach one might mean for you in your life. And it flabbergasted me, like, and I try not to judge young cats because I was full of piss and vinegar too, but it's like okay, once you brought your ego up a little bit from its deficit, you know what I mean? And I get it. You got to be narcissistic for a while maybe, but then reflect. Like, if knowledge is another element of hip hop, then reflect and understand. And if it meant so much to you, how are you going to pay it forward? Or are
Mhm.
you just selfish? You know what I mean? And one of the ways I can still make sense of all the hurt and the pain that I've gone through, not that it's going to fix it, but at 65, I think differently about my anger. I understand how my anger helped protect me over the years. But I was also like, I don't want to die like that. I see too many OGs dying like that. The angry old man. And not, this that isn't just in hip hop. It's like, damn, that's sad. That's sad for us all. Wouldn't we like to have a better understanding about that, and move forward towards our death with a new relationship of what anger means, and and not have it so visceral that it's controlling us, like in a rage department. You know what I mean? Yeah, I made that decision about 15 years ago that I was not going to die like that. Because, like, literally somebody cut me off on the Queensway. I full on visualized, like, pulling him over, taking him out of his car, beating him down, right?
Oh my, sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's just the visual of that. I'm just like, oh man, that's
Yeah, but a lot of
it's
people are
it's
carrying
common.
that
It's
kind of
common.
rage,
They
right?
are, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I even noticed it during COVID. It was like, are you kidding me? People are angrier on the road, more self-centered on the road. Like, this whole thing about compassion and community and the caring about others. I wanna try to live in a world like that, but we all got to contribute if we want to live in a world like that. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
there seem to be so many forces that pull us apart and just put us into little tribalism, and it's like, no, fuck, I ain't got a special needs kid, so why would I care about special needs kids? You know, that's
Mhm.
your bad luck. You know what I mean? Damn, are you kidding me? That's a shitty world, right?
Right,
And honestly, just kind of how it relates back to the day. Like, I'm older, you know what I mean? Like when hip hop was coming out, I was already 23, and I was already into punk, and I was already into Rage Against the Machine kind of thing. Like I don't buy into a lot of the things that capitalism is putting out there. So I was already kind of analytical. And so when I saw hip hop, I was like, even better, because I love dance, and I used kind of funk dancing to help heal me when I was young. And it seems to have a lot of similar values to punk. It's like we're going to create our own community, because the other one being presented to us is full of falsehoods and false demigods of greed and selfishness and self-centeredness. You know what I mean? And I I was very optimistic in the early days that all the elements of hip hop would just keep getting more political. You know what I mean? If you're going to put up a graph piece, you're going to put up a anti-Reagan piece. Like when Reagan came to down, me and Kid Quick went out in the Byward Market. We did a giant bubble letter graph piece. People weren't putting up graph in Ottawa. We did some of the first, and it was "Reagan is a psycho," right, in big bubble letters, because he was coming to Ottawa. And then
wow.
the next day, because I was studying subcultures at Carleton, I'm standing there with a trench coat on and my Billy Idol hair, being interviewed on national news about this graph piece and pretending I didn't know who did it. You know what
Oh
I
wow,
mean?
that's crazy. So you're like Bansky, but was it Bansky, that artist that that
Yeah,
nobody
yeah,
knows?
but we weren't technically good, but that was kind of still irrelevant. It was about we called it getting up. It's like we respected each other in hip hop, that you weren't there for the schlick and the coolness of it. You were there for the commitment of raging against the machine. Like Reagan was doing some foul shit, right? He was in El Salvador. There was the Ollie North thing. Like I was actively protesting and burning American flags and doing street theater about cruise missiles and all this stuff. And I saw hip hop as just a natural extension of all this, right? I mean, you listen to the early lyrics, like when like White Lines came out, about cocaine, and the message by Grandmaster Flash. Are you kidding me? Right? Like, listen to those lyrics. You know what I mean? And then later, of course, Eric B. and Rec, like all kinds of people, and you could have fun rap too, right? Like Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. That's just plain fun shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and we need fun to help get us through the quagmire of life. You know what I mean? But all that being said, I'm kind of like, man, why are you so fixated on just putting your name up? You know what I mean? There's nothing political about that. I guess there's something political in that, you're putting it on a train illegally and this and that, but it's like, that's narcissistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
If my name is Blade and I just put Blade up everywhere, I'm not, I'm missing the opportunity to make political statements about what's going on in the world. The same with rap, the same with cutting up music and making music, and the same with dance. Um, so I don't know. Like in the early days, like one of the things I talk about is like we felt committed to each other and all the elements to support each other. I always love to tell the story that like we used to go to clubs in Hull, and the underground club was Zinc, and just down the road on the Hull Strip was Chez Henri. Now Walter Grego was a cool guy. He owned it. I used to party with him. We would do shows there, but it was a little bit the get jiggy club. You know what I mean? So like the underground club was Zinc, where it was like slam dancing 1 minute, ciphers the next minute, right? But anyway, so we're doing a show at Chez Henri, and I meet the director of the National Arts Center. So he brings in all books in all the acts of whether it's modern dance or whatever, ballet, and and he asked me if I want to do a show opening for La 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 Human Steps. And La 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 Human Steps at the time was Canadian, but arguably the most famous modern dance company at that point in history, right? And like Edward Locke put La La together, and he did all the choreo and all the tours for David Bowie and things, right? So, anyways, we opened for them twice, but I pushed back. I was like, yeah, I'd love to do it, but now you know what? I ain't gonna do it. You got to pay us more money, but I'm gonna bring our DJ, and I'm gonna bring our MCs, and I'm gonna bring our beatboxer. Maybe we'll have some live graph being sprayed. It's the fucking full meal deal. And you know what? Those elements, the people that I knew back then, were younger, so they're like hungry. They're artistic, but they're 16 years old. They're not going to negotiate. I'm 23. I can negotiate with the director of the National Arts Center. You know what I mean?
That's
And then that's
incredible.
how we rolled out. And it was
That's
funny because so we're opening for La 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 Human Steps, and in the lobby we're doing the big show, and they got these big banisters from the second floor. And so we're like, what song are we going to put on? I don't know. Let's shake up the sensibilities of the rich and famous who are coming to see, La 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 Human Steps, right? Because this was like people of money in Ottawa, people with fur coats and all this, right? So we danced to a song called "Do It to the Crowd" by Twin Hype, right? And so a Florida group that was banned a lot because of they used a lot of F words. So it was great. Imagine us, and we come literally sliding down the balconies, and the lyrics start off, "Hey Shamig, what are you fucking stupid? That's a fucking crowd out there. Don't worry about it. Do 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 do." You know what I mean? The beats drop, and so like we had that little attitude about like we're going to give you a little bit of taste that we're not from the same world as you. You know what I mean? Which is like, you are the privileged people, the full-blown recipients of capitalism. And then we blew them away with what we do, doing it on our terms. You know what I mean? And so I've always been kind of like that angry edge, which I had for multiple reasons. Um, I I feel like I've always stayed true to like some of that angry edge that exists in hip hop. That why should we change our art forms to just kind of be submissive to make it palatable for you? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And even in my outreach, it's like, this is why I got out of big bureaucracy social work, because I was like, you know what? I don't have the flexibility in here to kind of do what's right sometimes. I'm really good at getting angry young men who've been released from prison to open up with me about why they hit their kids. But then now it's disingenuous. Then I got all the stuff I need if I have to go to court and take his kids away.
Wow.
Because we don't have programs in the Ottawa Valley for angry men. You know what I mean? So when I got out, I was like, I don't know, let's dig deep into analyzing what goes on in hip hop, what goes on in culture, what goes on when kids learn throat singing and they learn about their traditional drum, and elders talk to them about their legends, and then they tell the story in their top rock, in their hip hop choreo. I don't know, the legend of Sedna, you know, or whatever. That's giving them power. It because the sad part was, you know, back then kids had satellite TV in the Arctic, so they're watching and they see 50 Cent and they're like, "Yo, I gotta act like I'm some thug from New York when I'm hanging out in front of the only store in this fly-in Arctic community." Well, no, you don't. Hip hop should be open to like representing all the different things of the beautiful things that you have within your own culture. It's really sad. No wonder your parents are scared that you're watching MTV. You know what I mean? Because now you think gangster rap is the way you got to be. You know, so like as an example, we would, when we did graffiti in all these large communities, you know, imagine all the graffiti pieces. There's maybe 50 of them exist all over Canada's Arctic. They're all done in syllabics. Syllabics are mad cool letter characters, you know what I mean? Really neat when you 3D, and they're all messages that the kids come up with, you know, respect each other or whatever, like little short things, all their ideas, and it's all full of their own symbolism. Beluga whales, a muskox, polar bear, uh, kids doing Inuit games. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
giving them power back, going, man, your stuff is cool. Like, maybe you don't got New York gold, so you can't wear a grill, you don't have a triple ring, you don't have a rope chain. Why would you want that? You're not from there.
Right.
Guess what? You have a history of carving out of walrus ivory or beluga bones or caribou antlers. And so like even some of my bling, like if I'll wear it to New York or something, you know, I rock like these polar bear claws that have been carved and given to me as gifts or
Wow.
whatever, because it's like because I used to do that. I used to have gold caps on a couple of my teeth and things, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is the capitalistic money machine trying to tell you, okay, now we're gonna sell you what is cool in hip hop. Oh, Run DMC's wearing shell toes. Okay, let's pump out them shell toes to kids to be, you know what I mean?
Right. No, it's you know, commercialization, it's big business, it's and it happens to just about anything, right? And any cultural expression eventually becomes there's the monetization aspect, and it's certainly a reality for any cultural industry. You know, it's I don't want to say it is what it is, but it's great to hear that, you know, you always kept yourself rooted to what it meant for you originally and what it was, the source of you know, of
And
the art
and
form. And
those sources, look, like because I got involved with doing hip hop outreach, I've got to know people who do hip hop outreach all over the world, right? So Tiny Toons working with street kids in Cambodia, right? working with prisons in Uganda using breaking, and
Wow.
the message that I've tried to put out to these people is stop worrying about looking like you're a New York cat. You're not a New York cat. But don't tell me that Cambodia doesn't have all its own symbolism and legends and stories and stuff that can't be nuanced into your form of what hip hop would be. Even in our dance moves, right? Because yeah, I'm a dancer, right? But like when we do our top rock before we go down and hit the floor, um, that's all about stylized dancing up top, right? And it's supposed to represent either like culturally where you're from or personally, right? So I dance a lot with a bowler hat. So I do like hat tricks and comedic stuff, and I'll stop and I'll look at somebody in the cipher and I'll smile and I'll wink and I'll draw people in with my personality. But in the same vein, if you're from I don't know, let's say you're from Japan and you're a b-boy and then you're doing your tops and then all of a sudden you stop and you look at the guy and then you just do a sumo wrestler stomp. You know what I mean?
Right.
It sends a message, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you can incorporate this stuff in. And that's why I've never been one of them rigid OGs who's kind of like, no, this is the foundation. It's got to look like this. I understand foundation in terms of movement. This is just to kind of give people the ingredients to get started.
Mhm.
But then when you level up with it, it's reaching into your own personality, your own stuff, and your own cultural history and storytelling. You know what I mean? Like so in the Olympics, we will see incredible feats that Olympic gymnasts can't even do.
I
Like
was just,
blows my mind.
you know what? Let's jump on that, please. So as you were just mentioning there about the Olympics, breaking is about to make its Olympic debut at the Paris 2024 Games, which is going down in less than a week. How do you feel about this milestone for this dance style, and what do you think it will mean for the future of breaking globally?
So so I'm excited for the opportunities for young people. I'm I think our sense of community and the backstories and the culture is big enough and solid enough in other countries that we're not just going to forget that and just roll with the Olympics. Two things can be true at the same time. You know what I mean? Our history and our sense of community, and the new excitement and profile that the athleticism of it being in the Olympics is going to bring. Um, but sorry about that annoying phone.
No
It'll go
worries.
away in a second. Um, I I'm excited for young people, but I I think I can speak for a lot of OGs around the world that were worried that the sense of community may get overshadowed. Already, 20 years ago, crews existed way more than they do now. In the Olympics, it's solo battles,
Right.
individuals,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's not the crews. Now, the crew historically brought so much more than just the dance because it was like a brotherhood and a sisterhood of people having each other's backs through everything in life. That'll be the case if you interview Kid Quick, right? He always talks about me as being the big brother. He never had a dad, right? And I won't speak for him on his story, but all these things are important. If we don't have fathers and big brothers in our lives, isn't it great that something like a crew can fill some of these voids in a positive way? You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
But
and people find that sense of belonging in those communities, right? If it's a sports
yeah,
club, if it's a dance, if it's a crew, in terms of
and you
people.
know that people are there for you outside of just a crew. So, your girlfriend kicked you out of the apartment, you got no place to stay, you're staying on one of your crew's couches.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's the sense that people have your back.
Right.
And that's on the downswing. You know what I mean? The mid schoolers, there used to be a lot of famous crews, and they still exist, but like Massive Monkeys and Methods and Style Elements, um, they understand what it means to be family in a crew. Then something shifted about 20 years ago where we had something called super crews started to arrive. And so it was like, oh, 5 people from 5 different crews come together for this battle to try and win, because winning's the most important thing. And they make some fake little name that has words that represent all their crews for the battle. So that's interesting. But what's it eating away at? It's eating away about at the core of sense of community, which is why, like I was just about a month ago, I went to the Red Bull National Championships, breaking championships in Toronto. And I was treated beautifully, like as an elder, and I saw a lot of old friends. And so that's one thing, right? High level, Red Bull's involved. It's in a giant, the Four Seasons Theater, with multi-level balconies, blah, blah, blah. But the next day, my homeboys who are mid-schoolers are putting on a jam called Winter Wars in Regent Park. And it's old school crews battling. You know what I mean? And it's that hungry energy, and you were there. You could just feel that this is community, and it was beautiful. They let me speak on the mic for a few minutes, and I said something to the effect of like, "Yo, the Olympics are cool, Red Bull's cool. There's a place for this, but the glue that holds our culture together is community jams like this." And it has a different vibe, a different feel, and a different celebration to it. And so I don't want to lose that. And so kind of just like, this is part of why I'm going to the Olympics, right? Like a year ago, was getting pissed. I was trying to talk to the Canadian government. I'm trying to talk to Red Bull. I'm trying to talk about like, well, what are you doing to celebrate the histories? There might be OGs from Brazil and from Hungary, enemy squad might be there who heard about breaking when the Berlin Wall was still up,
Wow.
and like, I want to hear those stories. I want to hang with these guys. How do we capture and celebrate the pioneers? How do you, are you flying over some of the dudes from the Bronx, who were the dancers for Cool Herc parties and shit like this? And none of that was happening. And then I was just getting so stressed. I was like, are you kidding me? Because usually, because I was talking to my friends who were some of those pioneers, and they were originally promised that by the Olympics, and then the Olympics ghosted on all that. They're originally going to bring over Curtis Blow and reenact the Beat Street Battle and all these things, and none of that happened. So then I was like, I shifted gears about 8 months ago. I was like, I'm going to do this old school. I'm not even going to worry about money. I'm just going to find out. I'm going to reach out to a Paris crew that's OG like us. So I found Actual Force. I always knew about them, but didn't know them. They're 41 years old, like the Canadian Floor Masters. I was like, let's build something. At least so that at the very least, there's like a place we can say, hey, OGs, come gather here. We'll sit in circles and we'll storytell and we'll celebrate our histories and this and that, as kind of like a counterbalance to the Olympic hype. And so then you fast forward and now we're right in the Olympic Village. We're organizing something, and now.
Oh wait, are you in the village?
Yeah,
wow.
I've got some events organized with Actual Force. We got an OG jam happening, and then it turns out, so like 16 countries have pavilions in the Olympic Village, like the Netherlands, USA, France, Canada. Canada has Canada Olympic House. And they're having like Cirque du Soleil do something someday, Julie Black do something someday. You know what I mean? And so me and Kid Quick are actually now running a whole session in Canada House. I'm calling it Breaking Down Breaking. And we're gonna explain the components. This is top rock, this is footwork, this is a freeze, these are power moves, and this is a b-boy stance, this is a burner, right? And then we're gonna orchestrate an old school battle and stuff, and now I'm dealing with the head of Canada Olympic House in the Canada Village, right? But like, I guess that's sort of like the Olympics, you know what I mean? But it took a roundabout way us to get there to do something. And I think a lot of our networking with other people is going to be kind of sporadic and informal, but at least that'll still be something. You know, like my experience is mid schoolers in particular, they actually really want to hear the stories. Like a few years ago, I got flown to Philadelphia. There was a big international comp, and they treated us. Maybe there was 50 of us OGs like gold. But my favorite night was me and Clown and Storm and Quick Step and Float, rest in peace. And we're all sitting around just on a couch and we're swigging whiskey from a bottle and we're just laughing, telling stories, right? Oh shit, I remember the roller rink. Yeah, we used to get down in the middle. We used to lock on roller skates. We used to, you know what I mean? And these mid schoolers, all these cats your age, maybe 40 of them, they were just sitting in front of us, not saying anything with their jaws open, taking it in. And I really felt so respected. You know what I mean? Like I this is so much nicer than having these formalized panel where somebody asks a question and then you get 5 minutes to speak and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, no, they love it so much like we do. They want to understand us more. They want to hear the stories. It's not about who had the fastest windmill and could head spin the longest back in the day. Although there's some fun stories around all that stuff, you know what I mean? It's more about like understanding, you know, something out of nothing, you know. Wow, what was it like that you had to figure out the best furniture stores in Ottawa and go garbage day for them is Thursday. Now we got the giant refrigerator boxes. We're going to take them to the Byward Market. How are we going to get them to the Byward Market? We're going to tie them on the roof of Buddha's car. You know what I mean? We're going to go down. We're going to ask the restaurant because some of our friends are waitresses there. Can we run our extension cord, plug it in here? We're not going to bring a ghetto blaster. We're going to bring full Technique 2 turntables and big speakers, and we're going to street hit. And guess what? We'd make like $1,000 passing a hat back in like 83, 84 in the Byward Market. You know what I mean? That was
$1,000 back in 83. That's like
yeah, people
10,000.
were putting 20s in.
Yeah, that's like saying 10,000 today.
Right? People are putting 20s in because they'd never seen a backspin or a windmill before. So it's so exciting to them. You know what I mean? And we you know, we'd get in fights with the skinheads. They would spit on our cardboard. There were like there's so many stories, right?
I have to stop you there and ask, like, first of all, you know, the fact that you got you somehow managed to get programmed in at the Canada House in the Olympic Village, you know, to program breaking and breaking it all down. No pun intended. Is incredible.
Yeah, breaking down breaking.
It's incredible that you managed to do that and you did it, you know, in your way as you always do. It seems it's incredible, and I think it's a huge victory, obviously for the art form, and
I think it's a victory for Canada.
It is absolutely because they're really promoting their breaking. Their b-boys and girls at the games, as they should. And you know, I'm seeing a lot of ads for breaking across the board as far as digital and social.
And you know, Phil Wizard repping Canada, he's a great kid, man, and he's got a chance of winning the gold in this. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
I've got to know him a little bit, and like he's a perfect example of someone who deeply respects our history and the elders in this culture. And of course he's excited about sponsorships and the Olympics, but like, you know, like when we battled at that jam in Regent Park, we had a made up crew of old schoolers. And like when we made it to the next round, now we're going to battle Phil and some of the other best young breakers in Canada. We called them out. We said, no, not here. Outside on the concrete, old school. We went out in front to do it. Now we could only go first round, but you know, the first person hungry for the concrete was Phil Wizard, our guy in the Olympics. You know what I mean?
Wow. Hey, hungry
sessions.
You know, it's interesting because as you were describing, and we wish him and the rest of the, I think there's another, there's a big girl, forgot her name, but I've seen some of the promo material as far as video content on social media. I know they're doing an excellent job promoting, you know, Canada as far as b-boys and b-girls at the games, and we wish them all the best. But I must say, your description of you know, 83 at the Byward Market b-boying there. That whole setup there with finding, cardboard the side for refrigerators, cardboard, pardon me, and tying that up to your car, driving over the extension cord through this window, blah blah blah, at the restaurant. Like, you're essentially describing a sequence almost in a documentary, it seems like. Are there any plans to kind of, I don't know if the one's already been made or not, to retell that story in the form of just a documentary on, breaking in Canada or
You
at
know,
in Ottawa?
I mean, and that story that I kind of described, that story would be, so let's say I know Floor Lords. They're an old crew like us in Boston. They got similar stories. You know what I mean? You
Mhm.
find a crew in Dallas, Texas, they're going to have similar stories. And there'll be stories about how we got a hold of old footy. Like I was in Venice Beach in LA. Imagine I'm watching these kind of young black kids who were street hitting, doing their thing. And I start talking to them, and they're freaking out because they actually came from Texas, and they actually many years ago got a black market videotape of my cruise promo of us dancing, and saw it years ago. You know what I mean? Sometimes the
Wow.
connections go full circle. Like another beautiful story is Coach Matt from my crew, original crew. He became the head coach for gymnastics, male gymnastics in Canada, but he also opened up um, that we had a breaking practice at the Ottawa Gymnastics Center. And for like all the mid schoolers in Ottawa now, they all reminisce and talk about the 15 years that we all had these open practice sessions and what that meant for keeping the scene going in Ottawa. And then Matt goes off with Cirque du Soleil, and he's touring the world. His first tour was with Kidam, and they're setting up the tents in different cities. And every city Matt went, he found out who the street dancers were, and he got them in for free to see the Cirque du Soleil shows.
Wow.
And then you fast forward from that, then Matt opens up the doors for me to go to head office and consult for Cirque du Soleil in Montreal, because they're already starting to have people audition from hip hop for different roles and different shows. So an example would be like one of our friends in the Love Show, which was kind of a Beatles themed show, right? A Cirque show in Vegas, and he would like do flares and head spins on top of an old car. But it wasn't a b-boy act, but b-boying was brought into lots of different shows. Matt with the Lanuba show then brings down me and Crazy Smooth and Dazzle, and it's mandatory for all the circus performers from all the acts to do our workshops. You know what I'm saying? Because some of the communist country performers who are the world's best acrobats and best height trapeze people in the world, they had zero personality though. when
Wow.
when when they all came down and had to be front and center. So we used b-boying as a way, because we have personality. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
We're
mhm.
cipher cats. We know how to make you smile. And but at the end of the 2 days, like I remember the Russians are there, and I get this one guy's face, and I'm like, no, I'm not leaving until, I'm staring him down, going, until you give me something with your face, with your expression, da, 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 da. And he's like, no, Buddha, I don't dance, I don't, whatever. And by the end of things, he's like, Buddha, you're my best friend. Tonight we drink vodka and House of Blues together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so these are not small things, because Matt opened the doors, that eventually three of the world's most famous mid-school b-boys got their entire act was a b-boy act in the Lanuba show.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is all Canadian content. We open the doors for lots of Americans and things. And so those are really interesting connection stories. Like when me and Flash were were talking, I don't know if we talked about it in the interview, but it's like, yeah, we know a lot. We have a lot of little cross thread stories about, oh, I remember so and so went from here, and he told us about your crew, and then Clown went here, and then so and so went here. So it, those stories are glue. They're about community, but they're also about how things moved about. Like some of the most famous dancers in England, there's one guy called Tough Tim Twist. He became part of Rocksteady crew, and I was talking to him, about this old footage. We called it the White Tight Show. It was the New York City Breakers dancing for President Reagan's inaugural gala, and they destroyed it. Now we we called it the White Tight Show because the video that looked white but it was really silver tights. So I bring this tape over when I go live in England in 1985, and I'm hanging with all the top b-boys in England, London All Stars and Live to Break, and I bring my VHS tape, and one of them went and paid $25 to have it changed to their video format, and they lost their minds when they saw this footage. And then you fast forward, you talk about it, and it's like, holy shit. When that footage went out and then spread all over England and influenced b-boys all over England, like Second to None and stuff, that footage was probably the footage that Buddha brought over, the Canadian, when he came. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So I love connecting the dots in those stories. Some of that's all been done in interviews, but there's certainly space for more, like somebody could do a big Canadian documentary, because I don't want to make it sound like it's just the Canadian Floor Masters. Like, we were organized, we had outfits made, we got high level shows, but like, the crew that was the shit in Montreal was New Energy crew, and DKC still dances, and he's, now we talk shit about each other back then, and we never got to battle, but like, when you're an old man, you just are happy and have respect for any of the early crews in Canada. And there's
you guys
west,
still do you still talk shit about each other? No?
Just in a joking way.
Right.
Talking shit's a bit of a hip hop ritual in some ways. You know what I mean? But I'm like, you can obviously go too far with the shit talking. If you get stuck as a young cat that's all you are, is a shit talker. You know what I mean? I get the bravado thing, but now you're just closing doors. Now everybody just thinks you're a dick, right? Like they don't want to talk with you and hang out with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fascinating culture, and it absolutely has evolved. Something I haven't been trying to blow my own horn, but I'll give you an example. There's now like hip hop studies at Yale and Harvard and Cornell archives and this and that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
A lot of people are getting their PhDs on writing about hip hop.
Absolutely. It's a global culture. You'll find it in everywhere you go. Hip hop has influenced, essentially, to some degree, various cultures. If you think of K-pop, Korean pop music and all that, a lot of that is heavily influenced by hip hop. If you look at that history.
But here's my thing is, sometimes people are too much academic that they don't, and they get their stripes and they get their PhDs writing about our culture, but they're not like active participants. Mm-hmm. And so, just as an example on that, I was a young punk. I was in the Master's Social Work program. I meet this prof who mentors me. He's a world authority on youth subcultures. He wrote about punks, mods, rockers, skinheads. Rest in peace, Dr. Michael Brake. But we became good friends. I bought into all his ideas. And guess what? Many people think that I may have done the first academic thesis on hip hop in the world. But I haven't been gassing myself up, putting it out there. So I went to them, because you do a year coursework and you do 2 placements and then a thesis. And I was like, I don't want to write a 500-page thesis. Can I get special permission to do it as a video documentary? And I'll still get into all the subcultural theories and why is this important to understand at a deeper level if you want to do community outreach, yada, 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 right? So I got special permission. And because I'm a hip-hop head, I'm a b-boy, people opened up to me. I wasn't like a Carleton journalist student trying to interview people. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, fuck, Buddha's one of us.
Right.
Then we can just talk honestly. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I do this thesis. I submit it. I get the highest mark you can get, honors with distinction. Wow. It goes into the National Library of Canada. I kind of forget about it. I digitized it about 15 years ago. So now I'm finally sending out some copies because other academics, maybe they did their thesis in 89, are starting to get flown out and talking like they did the first thesis and stuff. And I'm like, well, no. And in fact, mine's a bit different because I'm not just an academic. I'm living, breathing as a b-boy all the time. You know what I mean?
You're
So
a
that's an
stakeholder.
even different perspective.
That's right. You're a stakeholder. You're an artist. You're part of the community. You're not just an outsider, sort of writing from an outsider's perspective. You're an insider.
Yeah. So what's going to happen now is this prof, or she's working on her PhD, Tasha Iglikas out of UCLA, is going to help get my, because I don't want to get paid or anything. I just want it out there. People should be viewing my thesis, so it'll eventually find its way into the international archives in hip hop. You know what I mean? But I kind of tested it. I sent it out to other people who are kind of involved in social work in hip hop. I sent it out to historians like Fable from Rock Steady Crew, Joe Slosh, who's written some books. And, the feedback I got from them was like, yo, Buddha, the stuff you were talking about, the ideas you were putting forward in 85, 86, 87 were ahead of its time.
Wow.
And I'm not telling you this to gas myself up, but I've learned kind of the past few years that if you also don't tell your story, it may never get told, and other people will gas themselves up and take stripes that maybe they don't fully deserve.
Absolutely, absolutely. And people struggle with this because they don't want to be seen as, quote unquote, self-promoting. But if you don't advocate for yourself in terms of telling your contribution to the bigger story and so on, if it's in the arts, if it's in whatever that may be, then obviously, if you don't do it for you, who's going to do it? You know what I'm saying? Like people have to take ownership for their own
Yeah, and
advocacy,
I
and there are
just think,
different ways of going.
and there's some neat ideas in there. And so then when I live in England, then I actually got to put the ideas in my thesis into a real live project, which is
How
when I went to,
how
because
exciting was
I
that?
was
How exciting was that for
like,
you?
are you fucking kidding me? Like, so again, like I just went back after 40 years and I saw some of these old friends, and we're just trying to set the story straight because back then all the hip hop events were happening in Brixton. The white population is scared to go there, and the record company's trying to own it. So
Mm.
I'm hanging at the youth center doing my placement. I'm accepted because I'm a b-boy, but like all the b-boys are, most of them are black youth, from Brixton, Elephant,
Mm.
and Castle. And the top graffiti artists in England are there, Mode 2 and Pride and Zaki, all them from the Chrome Angels and all this. And I was like, okay, what if we put a festival right in the heart of downtown touristic London, Covent Garden, and you guys own the shit? And we make this committee where two people represent each element, and we have to work it out, and you have to do the press releases, you have to do the media interviews. That was the social work. The process was the social work. You know what I
Wow.
mean? And so I had this idea, and again, I'm a little bit older. I think I was 24 maybe, and or maybe I was 25, and I had to bite my tongue, man, like when they're fighting and talking over each other, not listening. But that's how they learn. That's how, like, Graf had to listen to the MCs and understand where they're coming from. And so fast forward, historically, people now talk about it as being the turning point in UK hip hop, and that the UK hip hop scene went on to influence all the rest of Europe moving forward.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And
Wow.
and because that came out, like there was a hip hop magazine called Big Daddy. They finally traced me down about 20 years ago, and they were like, people talk about you all the time. But my nickname back then was Negative G. It wasn't Buddha. And so they couldn't find me. And then they found me, and we talked about this. And they wanted to talk about, because they were like, yeah, man, like Mode 2, they all talk about that. Like they were just kids, but they got power. Back to our power comment, you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
That's where you learn, and you've internalized it in your gut. I can do this shit, right? I'll give you an example. So like Mode 2, he's like the modern day Keith Haring. I'm sorry, but like his stuff, if you look at any of the Battle of the Year posters where all the characters are breaking and stuff all in the graph, he's done things. He's done like with his crew, gone out and done like city block long murals along the Seine River in Paris and stuff, right? Where you see their piece and then you just look up and there's the Louvre. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But anyways, so Mo was a young kid, 15 with a stutter, but he was incredibly talented. And I'm like, okay, Mo, um, let's get permission. You go ask Kate, who runs the youth center, can we use her office so we can talk? Okay, so we go sit in the office. Okay, what sprays do you use? Because back in North America, we use Krylon. No, man, what we use over here, it's a spray called Buntlack. Okay, how do you spell that? Write down on a piece of paper. Okay, get the phone book. You know, as back when, like, you imagine how thick the London phone book is back then. It's like a 8-inch thick phone book, right? Okay, look up Buntlack. Okay, go ask Kate if you can use the office phone to make the phone call. No, man, I ain't gonna do the call, Buddha. Come on, man, you do it for me. You can do it. No, you got to do it, right? So he makes the call, and then they tell him, no, you can't. Don't talk to us. We're the UK distributor. You got to talk to head office. It's in Germany. Oh shit. Now it's a long distance call. I ain't got the money. You got to get permission to use the phone. They're going to bill it to the youth center. Da, da, da. Mode's got to go negotiate all that. But he does that, right? A week later, we're at the youth center and a flatbed truck pulls up to the youth center and it's full of cases and cases and cases of Buntlack sprays from Germany.
Wow.
He did that. And now he's one of the most famous European graph artists in the world. It's legendary museum exhibits, blah, 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 right? That's power.
Yeah, it certainly is. And just hearing all this, I'm hearing you talk, and I'm like, you know what, man? You need a podcast series where you retell these stories and you kind of, those threads that you're talking about, connecting all of this hip hop culture movement and power and like retell these stories in the form of like podcasts or something, because I'm just you're taking us on a wild historical ride, and it's just very cool to hear. And I think there's archival value in all this, for people to hear it and
Yeah, I got
document it.
diabetes, man. I could stroke out tomorrow. you know?
Hey,
Oh man. But you know what?
before we
There's lots of
continue,
people like me out there, right? It's
mm,
just I'm glad I wasn't 15 when I got introduced to hip hop. I kind of got pre-introduced to it in like 75, but it wasn't called hip hop yet. But I got introduced to the vibe of hip hop at the roller rink because we would dance on roller skates and we got down to the 70s funk, right? That's
right.
kind of a pre-hip hop story because it's also got teenage hormones going, sense of community, blah, 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 dim the lights, put on Marvin, ask a young lady to skate, pure magic. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's no different than I'm at a Cool Herc party and the girls are watching, and I got down and I jumped in the splits and did some simple footwork, and then all of a sudden I got noticed. You know what I mean? It's the same teenage hormone shit, right? So
Right.
so I grew up with that honestly by living down near Windsor, right across from Detroit, and then that's why when I eventually saw like Star Wars, Wild Style, Beat Street, Flashdance, I'm like, the fuck is that? That guy spun his back. I need that. I need that shit because I was still hurting. I was still healing, but I was already a good dancer. You know what I mean? But it was more funk styles, like locking. We watched Shields and Yarnell on TV. We watched the Soul Train lines. You know, we had a TV show called Roller Funk where it was basically Soul Train on roller skates, like like that shit. I'm a grown ass man. I still have dreams about doing my tricks at the roller rink. You know what I mean?
Can you share some of your unique challenges and successes you've encountered while working with youth in correctional facilities throughout your hip hop outreach program? And from there, if you could tell us about, you received the Service Cross, the Meritorious Service Cross, excuse me, for your work.
Right.
How did this recognition impact you in your outreach efforts?
I'll tell you. I think that came about because when Michael Jean was Governor General, um, she knew about our work and she loved it and supported us. And I got invited to Rito Hall a bunch. Then I actually helped bring down some kids from Clyde River in the Arctic. and they did like big hip hop performances in the Museum of Civilization and this and that, and they had all done my outreach work up in the north, you know what I mean? So they had their own great story to tell, and they were supported by the elders up there. The elders sold their outfits, yada yada yada. So I think that's kind of maybe how I got on the radar of the government, you know what I mean? And I think maybe another step was at one point, maybe about 15 years ago, I was made something called an Ashoka Fellow, and that's a big honor. There's maybe, I don't know, let's say there's 60 in Canada, but there's a couple thousand worldwide, and it's change makers in the world. And it's a very tough audition process. Somebody submitted my name. I got interviewed for like 20 hours, you know, all
Wow.
about my childhood, my entrepreneurship, my ideas, my principles, my concepts, yada yada yada. Um, but that's opened a bunch of other interesting doors for me. You know, like I'm now part of this international group concerned about well-being, right? Started out, I was the part of the first cohort from Ashoka Fellows around the world on our own personal healing. And then now that's turned into organizational well being. So, how do you bring deeper well being into, I don't know, into like a corporation or big brothers and big sisters across Canada and stuff? You know what I mean? So, you know, we learn from each other. Like I have friends that are teachers in Egypt, and I have friends that are working on saving the Amazon forest, like a really diversified group of people. But that's been fascinating, and all these doors kind of spun open. Like there was nothing strategic on my part. You know what I mean? It's just like my advice to other people would be just like follow your passion and your heart, and sometimes good shit happens, but be smart enough also to recognize if opportunities present themselves, right? So then we started just how we got to doing the prison work, because it's kind of interesting. So the Canadian government actually paid me a lot of money to speak at a couple of international conferences on like cool shit Canada's doing, right, related to justice. And I kind of was like, yeah, well, that's cool. I'll take your money. I'm a good speaker, and you know, there's a good story to tell. But you don't support our work. Can we fix that? So then this is maybe 10 years ago. Then Justice Canada called me back and they said, new money's getting released with Justice Canada. And I was already doing some prison work. And they're like, we think you should apply. So we then set up a federal nonprofit called Blueprint Pathways, and we got $500,000 to expand our prison work in maximum security youth prisons across Canada. And then we built a research component in it the first one time, and it was a multi-year funding thing. So that's a big success, right? Like most people struggle with, they get a $30,000 grant, a $40,000 grant, but we already had a proven track record of doing good, exciting work. I think that helped, and I think I'm a pretty good grant writer. So anyway, so we got that, and we studied motivation to change. And so like you can go on my website and people can download a 60-page readable document that's got all the stats and all the studies and the ways that we did our research, but it's in a readable form because it's also got the poetry of the kids, it's also got testimonials of the kids, it's also got the art of the kid. You know what I mean? Because I was like, this is what I hate about research is they make these documents and then nobody ever fucking reads it. I want to have a document that people who want to pursue creative ways of helping people with extreme trauma heal, that they
Mm.
can read and feel motivated to understand it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, anyways, those things are all on our website, and then we got 500,000 from the Trillium Foundation of Ontario. And we grew our work into, I've been told we've done the largest outreach in the history of alternative schools and
Wow.
stuff, and these kids, and in fact, we then trained some of those kids who were like spoken word artists and stuff themselves, and they became, they're alternative school kids and they became Blueprint staff, You know what I mean? Same way we trained Inuit kids to become Blueprint staff up north when we ran leadership programs. So I've been told, I don't know if this for a fact, but like I could tell you story after story about getting into the prison system is not easy. But I kind of got there because I was doing some keynotes, and then people started noticing at high levels, like justice ministers of provinces and stuff, and Manitoba was one of them, and that I got us into the maximum security youth prison in Manitoba, mostly First Nations kids, way higher disproportionate amount of them compared to the regular population. So something's wrong, right? And and the first time we were in, the staff were petrified. They're like, "Who the fuck invited this guy called Buddha in? Says here he's going to be talking about sexual abuse and healing." And like people actually tried to sabotage us. They called like the justice minister. He came in to see us, and I didn't know who he was. He was some big bearded guy walking around. I started talking, and we're just watching, and all of a sudden, like, there's spontaneous laughter from 50 of these kids, and you could just feel no tension. You felt a sense of community. We had 20 warring gangs represented, 90 youth, and not one gang sign went up all week. So then I
Wow.
have staff coming to me afterwards going, "We were wrong. We're sorry. We prejudged. Oh my God, this was great." And then now I'm on a big 3-year grant from public safety, and we're going back every year to Winnipeg. And now I'm told that, before we did our project, they only allowed 5 kids in the gym at any given time because they were terrified shit was going to go down. And there's always that possibility. There's blood wars between Manitoba Warriors and Indian Posse, like deaths back and forth, right? And but now I'm told that when we're there, the stress and suicide ideation is at the lowest it is in the entire year. And because of the experience of Blueprint coming in and doing these kind of large group therapy projects, they now have powwows every year, and they never used to have those.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So if you stand back and look at changing systems, the blue wall of police, the blue wall of prisons are tough to crack into. But I had the idea that you're not going to academically try to convince these people that here's why we're on point. You know what I mean? But show is proving. You know what I mean? Let the kids prove them that they're wrong, and that's kind of what's happened. And now we go back and we roll in, and all the staff are excited. Oh my God, everyone's excited. You're back again. Da, 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 da. Something shifted. You know what I mean? And so, like, one of the head guys, he's not there anymore. He's now with the adult. He works with all the sex offenders in Manitoba. But he's told me, he said, "I'm sure, Buddha, that you are the largest group therapy projects, probably not just in youth prisons, but even if you brought in all the adult corrections across Canada, you probably do more large group therapy than anyone in the history of prisons in Canada." And we fucking grew out of hippity hop doing it our way, not fucking caving. You know what I mean? Like politically, yeah, you know what I mean? I watch my language, the way I talk or whatever, you know what I mean? But we try to turn those into lessons with kids. Like, you got to be situationally aware, right? Like when you're out in the world and stuff, and you can close doors for yourself and things, but if you don't, be aware of what's going on. And I love the way that so we do these week intensives. And my favorite piece that I do is I think they look at me as their grandpa, and maybe many of them don't have a grandpa and they miss that. And I sit backwards on my chair. I pull them in close. They're sitting 4 feet away from me, and I can see the tears in their eyes, man. Some of the hard kids, probably half the kids we work with are in for murder, like that kind of high ratio. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have lots of great stories, and I learn a lot from the kids. We have, like, I feel like I've set up a situation where we have a fast feedback loop that's not encumbered by big bureaucracy. This is worth thinking about in terms of when we set up interventions in the world. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So education and children's aid, these are huge bureaucracies. But I was like, No, I'm doing it my way. Hey, guess what? One of my Blueprint staff went away and learned meditation for 3 years in Thailand. I'd be a fool not to let him lead some meditation and see if we could use that to end the day off, you know?
Mhm.
We just do it. I don't have to check it with the board of directors if I have a programming change. And I think that helps keep it real and authentic to the kids. And they also are receptive because we're not part of the system. You know what I mean? And just like you complimented me that you felt like my interview had some authenticity, maybe that is a bit of a people are have a hunger for that. And I think all my team members bring that kind of realness and like we're not fucking angels, you know what I mean? But like, Troy in my group, he was the lead in the musical Stomp and toured the world. He's the bucket drummer for the Toronto Raptors, and his
Wow.
whole body is tattooed. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, what prison kid isn't going to look at him in awe? You know what I mean? And
Right.
yet he's a gentle giant. He doesn't like angry men because that was his story with his dad. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of wisdom that exists in the world, and too many times that wisdom doesn't get out there because we feel like it's got to be formalized and sanctioned by legal communities and government communities and yada yada yada, and it takes away the realness, right? And it sets up those stupid power things that we talked about at the beginning, so
If I can ask this one last question for you, I really appreciate this interview. There's so much more to explore. Maybe we'll have to do it again after the Olympics, if that's cool with you, after you come back from France. You know,
absolutely.
you mentioned bureaucracy. As far as social work and all the different adjacent sort of services related to social work. You're not a fan of bureaucracy, and obviously you've managed a really creative way to do the work authentically, to show results, right? And how, I guess my question to you is, for people looking, to do this sort of work, where you're being creative, what advice would you give someone like looking to use hip hop culture as a way to promote healing and positive change in their community, but outside of the traditional current model, if it's a bureaucratic, very heavy administrative one that might strip
I,
away.
I think hip hop culture generally has been lazy ass. So let me explain what I'm thinking here. It's like we can't expect to just go, and I got this creative program, just trust me on this. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If you're describing a program, if you were developing a spoken word outreach program, you're actually going to have to help connect the dots kind of therapeutically of people understand this, right? Here's a little bit of the brain science. Here's the new networks being formed to the frontal lobe. Here's what storytelling doing. Here's what PET scans are doing. Here, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And because I always used to kind of joke and go, well, for a long time, hip hop outreach didn't go anywhere because uh, people just thought it was kind of cute, and we have a gut feeling that it's important. We see self confidence, right? I describe that as like throwing some hip hop shit on the wall and hoping something sticks. Well, you're not going to get $500,000 multi-year funding on that. You might get 20,000 or something, but like, how do we next level it? And Blueprints next leveled it by also doing the research things. Now, my current research is a really interesting topic because I keep personally researching trauma and healing, and I'm fascinated with these kids have a hard time visualizing tomorrow. So if you can't visualize tomorrow or Christmas, how are you going to visualize and move towards a stable relationship, a job, like all these things? And all this is directly related to hope. How do you get hope in life? We take that for granted. If we've had a regularly solid upbringing and we have hope, I see it as like, I know, well, that's why you can't understand it when kids don't have it, because you have made the assumption that it just exists for everybody.
Mhm.
But can you imagine kids who have never known in their gut what hope feels like? So that's what I'm studying on our current public safety prison work is how does hope play into this? And can the actual activities give micro things to build hope on that you internalize? And I'm also fascinated with we live too much in our heads. What
Mhm.
about the body experience? Like this is Eastern wisdom, you know what I mean? That forever talks about like the holistic stuff. And guess what? Like I'll go listen to fucking listen to The Body Keeps the Score or Gabor Mate's stuff.
Right.
The Myth of Normal. I'm on my third time listening to that, making notes and things. Like we're finally at the place where we're not like all trying to act like individual peacocks and pharmacology's puffing his chest out, psychology's puffing his chest out. You know what I mean? Because we're
Mhm.
realizing humble our asses, it's actually all these things interconnected are some of the best approaches. And it's been really validating for me because a lot of the stuff that we all do, that we've been doing for years, is the shit that people like Gabor Mate talk about,
Mhm.
right? There's actual stuff that happens when I'm looking in the kid's eyes, the biofeedback and stuff. So you need to talk about those things. You know what I'm saying? To advance hip hop outreach and I've had meetings. I had a meeting in Washington D.C. where another guy who did rap therapy in Oakland. He was there. He has an MSW. Me and him presented. We brought together hip hop outreach programs from across the states, and we brought together frontline organizations like education, schools, probation, stuff like that. And then we brought the big high end funders together, all in the same room. And basically, the high end people who have the millions that they can give, they were like, we had no idea you guys were so smart on all this.
Wow.
There was often language barriers. You know what I mean? So on
Mhm.
the hip hop level of the street running this program, we may use different language to describe it, but there's actual medical scientific language that describes the same thing. You know what I mean? So, but
Mhm.
uh, then I'm kind of like, well, fuck hip hop. It's on us. We can't rely on other people to help, bring us to the trough of funding. We need to step up our game and be more on point on all this, and it's possible. We're Blueprint's an example that it's possible. Fuck, they had this national conference of social workers. Imagine this. So let's say there's 20 social work schools of social work at universities across Canada. So
Mhm.
imagine the deans of all those. They're all there. There's maybe about 600 social workers. And the theme of the national conference is social work needs to change. And me and Cirque du Soleil are the keynotes. Fucking dope, right? Because Cirque du Soleil's got all its outreach programs too. So there's a hunger and there's the recognition that our old ways ain't cutting it. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
and I'm not here to pretend like gas myself up like I know all the answers. I'm continually still learning and I'm excited about that. There's a lot of bright cookies in here, like Gabor Mate. He's not a hip hop head, but I feel like he's a hip hop head when I hear
Oh,
him
he
talk.
definitely Gabor Mate is definitely a hip hop head. He has to be, man. He's I listen to a lot of his interviews and he has a very old soul sort of hip hop feel
Yeah,
to the way
I wish I
he
hope to
speaks.
meet him someday. You know,
You
it's
should, man. I think you should interview him or do something. It'd be fascinating to see you two exchange ideas.
yeah, it's so my advice is like don't always try to reinvent the wheel. I did a presentation once for hip hop heads and I did it like walking stones, like this step, this step, this step. I think I had 30 steps to setting up a hip hop outreach program. It doesn't have to necessarily happen in those orders, but you know what I mean? Sometimes it's nice to graphically actually see, yo, like Here's where you could get sabotaged, right?
Right.
Here's the insurance piece. Here's the you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's lots of pieces, and at the same time you're trying to hold together the integrity of the magic of the spoken word that you want to flesh out. But it's not good enough, you know what I mean, for you to just go, you'll trust me on this because it works for me. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that's not valid, but like if I just said, look, I had trauma and I'm a dancer and it works for me, so trust me. You know, on the flip side, I've been kind of lucky in that I have personally 40 years of frontline experience as a social worker to draw upon too. So that gives me some credibility, you know what I mean? They can't just write me off. So like even all those deans when I was talking, I was like I was using language. I looked at them all and I went, sometimes I feel like the more degrees we get and the more we sit in our office, the more we act like our own shit don't stink.
Oh, you said that?
I said that to them all the
Uh,
deans,
uh,
and there was this quiet, and then all of a sudden everybody just burst into laugh because I don't care. I just
right.
speak what I feel. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I was like, they're either going to write me off and go, "Who invited that wild card up in here? Take away his MSW." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, you know what? A lot of them haven't done frontline work for a long time,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Like I was speaking to Jane and Finch in Toronto. I had all these black women from U of T come up to me and they're like, oh my fucking God, why do guys like you not get invited to speak at the MSW program? All we have is these old profs that are giving us all this great theory and no real world practical examples that we can
Right.
like link it all to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
application, real hands-on application in the field on the ground, and plus that all those years of breaking and you know, connecting with community, building community as you mentioned, you know, and negotiation. You're also a great negotiator too, from the sounds of, you know, hearing your story.
and I'm stubborn and I still have some anger. You know what I mean? So I'm like I don't necessarily play well in the sandbox, but I'm not stupid in the sandbox. You know what I
But you
mean?
know, maybe it's a blessing too to have a little bit of anger and a little bit of stubbornness when you apply it with, you know, all these other skills in terms of having a vision and sticking to it and executing it and seeing the value of going outside of the sandbox because maybe the current sandbox isn't addressing these core issues, you know, in whatever field because of bureaucratic limitations, right? I mean, could you imagine you stayed within the
I
traditional
don't think
route?
I could have mentally survived. Like I'm glad I learned a lot doing child protection. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I'm I'm wired from a young child not playing well in the sandbox. You know, I have resistance against authority. I don't like judgy people. This is why I fucking when I was a young cat living in England, I fucking shaved my head and I had a big black and white mohawk. You know what I mean? Because part of me was like, "Fuck you! I can look like this and still be a smart person." You know what I mean? Like fuck you, judgy world, right? And so even for me at this old age, I'm a very sensitive person. I get hurt easily. I don't like judgy people. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
think it's also because I've been judgy on myself. Like when you have trauma, you know what? Your self-talk shifts even if you don't want to admit it to one of I'm not good enough. I feel
Mhm.
like I've in some ways had to try to prove myself my whole life. And now I'm at the point where I'm really trying to settle into I don't have anything to prove, you know? I need to just love myself, right?
Absolutely, and also be surrounded in a community that values you for you, right? Because sometimes people maybe in environments that don't see people for who they are and what they are, you know, and honor them for their energy, right? As opposed to conform and
It's a really judgy world out there, and
it is.
I've had even staff and other people involved in my life that I've given opportunities for, and maybe I've been a little naive in that their own hurt and their own issues come racing too much to the table, and they're not willing to deal with their own shit
Mhm.
and heal. You know what I mean? And so I've opened myself up to some vulnerability, and I've had some people attack me, and I'm like, not that I haven't made some mistakes and be accountable for some things, but more and more I look at it like a lot of the people who are really hurt is all good until something goes wrong, and then they don't want to deal with their own stuff, and the easiest thing their whole life has been to go pit bull on other people.
Mhm.
And I just find that sad, but it just, being a social worker, I see that all over the place. It's a conundrum. I don't know.
I don't want to ask you this question, but and you don't have to answer it. But sometimes I wonder, for people in the field who do social work and who work with various communities, if it's people living on the streets or people who use drugs, etc., how much trauma they absorb, secondary trauma, from just being exposed to so many stories, and how does one disconnect when you go home and you kind of, what I'm saying? Like, because
Oh,
work,
what you're describing is very, very real. And despite me knowing a lot about that, and despite me, like, if I was to give you personal advice on that tip, I'd probably give you some really great, great advice and ideas. But keeping it in practice in a daily reflective way in your own personal life is very hard. And I'll tell you the single biggest thing that's been useful for me is, like, I remember, let's say I was going to work at Jones Aid, and I knew today I'm going to interview this blind girl who was raped by her grandfather. That's the backstory. Like, that's going to be a horrible day for me. I may at some point, and maybe I got to interview the grandfather. Maybe I'm going to feel like beating up the grandfather. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
like. So, and my kids were younger then. So how do I then go home and just walk through the front door and be that loving father to give my son Aaron a hug? So I would often try to strategize in advance. I was into whitewater surfing in my kayak, like at Champlain Bridge. I used to go there every night. And I would go to work with a boat on my car, and I would phone Susan and say, "No, man, I was right. It's that day I can't come home. I got to go. I'll go right to the river." And I sometimes, literally, brother, I'd be the last one off the wave. The seagulls are out, the sun's setting, maybe a little bit dangerous. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I'm out in the middle of the Ottawa River there surfing, but I know the wave pretty good. I'm at my peak, and that it's that that good kind of exhausting tire. Like, I've never played hockey stuff, but I can imagine it's like you're mad and you go slap pucks for an hour, and then it was a release for you. And I could literally feel the blackness of the world coming out of and down through my body, and you're in so tight in your kayak out my knees and disappearing in the white water around me. And then I'd go home and I was physically tired but also emotionally cleansed.
Mm.
And so nature and being alone with myself has been a thing, continues to be a thing. Like today I went out for 3 hours by myself,
On the
practiced my
water?
roles, you know.
3 hours on the water, or just walking
Yeah,
in
three
nature?
hours kayaking just
Oh,
in my
nice,
boat, you know.
nice. Yeah.
And I have a group of friends, and this extends way back from growing up with my dad canoeing and kayaking and stuff. And nature is a beautiful healing thing,
Hmm.
but it still creeps up on you. I mean, these are the discussions we have in this well-being initiative that I'm involved in and stuff. It's tricky stuff. It's tricky stuff, man.
Well, Buddha, thank you very much for your time. This has been an incredible interview, and I'm hoping to do it again. I know there's more to unpack. I appreciate you being, very open with a lot of these subjects, and some of them were the work you do is very challenging, I would imagine, and very important at the same time. So I hope you continue doing it. And all the best in Paris. And I'm really curious to hear all about breaking in Paris and what you
Yeah.
see. And
All right. Well, it's been fun talking, brother.
thank you very much.
All right. You take care, B.